Howdy Meeps, it's Sen here, and I'm here with just Hafiz.
Just
That
a feed, but we got something interesting for all of you today.
yeah, that's not to minimize Hafiz's presence. That's just to say that there's nobody else.
I mean,
We don't have another guest tonight, is what I'm
normally I'm in
saying.
the background is eye candy, so today I get center stage, which I'm okay with.
Yeah. Um, how'd you get such a white background behind you? Are we like gonna like cut out
it
like your head and like put things behind you
it
all
is
day?
literally a wall that is like right here
Oh, okay.
because this is where the modem is, and so I had to move away from the really nice game shelf in the background because the internet sucked, and so
Yeah.
it looks like I'm floating in space.
That's okay. It's very easy to clip your head and like make fun Photoshop things with you now.
Oh yeah,
So
you can do you meme the heck out of this. Anyone watching at home, you have my full permission.
All right, so we thought that it'd be interesting since Hafiz is like literally in the trenches right now to finish up your Kickstarter for nothing but net. Tell me just like how many days are left, by the way.
Oh, we're just under 2 weeks, so there's 13 days left. It's going to be ending on May 20th, like midday.
So it's on Kickstarter now. It is fully funded. What how many percentage are you
Oh,
at right now?
for anyone who's planning on running a Kickstarter, by the way, there's a site called KickTracks, and they will look at all of your stats and logistics and things like that. I am about 250%, a little over 250% funded on the game, so thrilled with that. But
Hmm.
that's we're gonna be diving into numbers today. We're gonna be talking about how much does it cost to actually self publish your own game using something like Kickstarter? Because that's a question that I know I had when I was first starting off. Like, okay, well, how do I budget for all of this, and what are all the different steps, and what are the things I should be thinking about? And I know it's one that comes up for a lot of different designers, especially those that may not be interested in pitching, or it's their baby, they want to do it on their own, or maybe they just want to see what it's like to start a publishing company. Um, so we can dive into the weeds a little bit on that to give a sense of, well, what does it actually cost versus what do you see on the Kickstarter page? Because bit of a spoiler, anytime you look at a Kickstarter and they have a funding goal, that is not the goal to actually fund the game.
Yeah, it can vary very drastically
Hmm.
in terms of what the strategy of the actual publisher is. So, man, I wish we had talked about this just a little bit before because I would have changed the title of this episode from "Nothing But Net" to "Nothing But Numbers" because
Oh,
apparently that's all we're going to talk
that
about
would have been
today.
good.
Would have been good. Would have been great. Okay, so let's get down to brass taxes then.
Yeah.
So Nothing But Net is on Kickstarter now. You said you're about 250% funded.
Mm.
What was your initial asking funding level?
It was 6,000 Canadian, which is a little over 4,200 American or so. So that was what we were hoping for to hit the funding goal. So right now I'm just under 16,000. We're about halfway through the campaign. So I'm hoping by the end of the campaign, we can get close to 25, maybe $30,000 to um, from backers, and then also to see, okay, what are the numbers looking like? How much should we order of the game itself?
Right. So the funding level was 6,000 Canadian, you said?
Yep, 6,000
Okay.
Canadian.
And if you were to do an MOQ, like a
Mhm.
minimum order quantity with $6,000, how many would you print?
The minimum. So I have a manufacturer already. There's some really great ones that are out there, and highly recommend anyone who is planning on self-publishing reach out to a ton and then
Yeah,
compare
at least
prices.
3, at least.
Oh yeah, I think I reached out to about seven, but I had a very specific box in mind, and it was one that turned into a dice tower. And so I reached out to everyone and like, this is the box that I would like. What are the numbers? And I ended up going with a company called Gameland, and they weren't at the very top and they weren't at the very bottom for prices. They were smack dab in the middle, like literally the medium vote or company. And it would cost the minimum is 1,000, and so it would cost just about just under 5,000 USD to hit the minimum just for manufacturing.
Right. Okay. And for those people who don't know, there's like little tiers that as you print more, it's usually like in volumes of 1,000 or 500, depending on the company. You might get little price breaks here and there, right? So
Yeah.
now at a MOQ of 1,000, Hafiz is saying it's about $5 per copy, USD, right? And
Yeah.
so as you get more and more funding and you're printing more and more, you're actually now able to exploit economies of scale, which is what the hope really is, right?
Yeah, and Kickstarter leans into that, the whole idea that like, hey, the more that we gather, now we can unlock cool things because we have the extra funds to do it. So stretch
Mhm.
goals, when you're seeing those on Kickstarter, it's like, okay, we made enough money where now we can pay for this one thing that we really want to have in the game, but we aren't able to do it otherwise.
And now
The more
everybody gets that, right?
Exactly. And when we were talking with JT Smith from
Mhm.
the Game Crafter, their approach is really similar because there's different ways you can crowdfund. So I'm on Kickstarter right now. Other people have just produced their game, they're selling it on their own sites. But another thing you can do is go to the Game Crafter and have your game up there. And then because they're print on demand, the more people that do crowdfunding on there, the more people that sign up for the game, it just brings the cost of the game down for everyone. And so there's a few different approaches, and we'll share a little bit more about why Kickstarter, because there are all these different platforms. And I think we can even jump to the beginning to be like, okay, well, what does this look like when you're starting off? What does this look
Mhm.
like in the middle? What does this look like as you're finishing off? So you can have an entire arc to understand.
Right.
Oh, this is what the full picture looks like if you were planning on designing your own game and having it out there as a self-published designer.
Okay, so let's start there then. So
Yeah.
we did talk about your initial ask, but even before that, how did you plan all of this? What did you do? How much of the game was ready to go when you hit
Yeah.
like start?
For planning, pure stubbornness, that will get you through a lot. And I think it actually might be important for something like this because if you hit a roadblock, you can either find a way to go over it or you could just stop. And so, coming back to how much of the game was done, it's interesting because there is this false sense of confidence that you sometimes get when you decide that you're going to self-publish. Like, okay, this is my game; it's ready to go. Let's go. Um, and then you need to take a step back to think, okay, is this actually the as far along as it needs to be? So early on, costs are really cheap. All you really need is some cards and some markers and things like that. So it's just a few dollars and maybe, you know, 20, 30, $40 to go to a proto spiel or go to a conference or a con and get people to play and test the game. So early on, your costs should be very little. Don't be investing in art. Don't be investing in any of that kind of stuff early on. Um, and so it was, I would say, 85, 90% of the way there before I'm like, okay, let me start moving forwards with art. Um, there's definitely been a lot of change that happened after I decided to get art done. Luckily, it didn't impact the art at all. It was more so I knew I was going to have, since the basketball game, I have different moves, so there's different characters on each card. There's been tweaks and changes to balancing them. So some cards they now get discarded because they're overpowered once they're used. Other cards, there it was more about like how many are there in the deck. It was less about, oh no, I spent money on this art piece and now I can't use this card. Um, and then things like, well, because it's a bit of a deck builder, what's your starting hand look like? Should it just be like this, or should there be more of a focused, prescribed? Here's your starting hand. You're going to build from there. And so the nice thing was with this one, as the game developed, it was less about changing; it was more about adding on top. And I think that made it a little bit easier in thinking through the art piece of it, and then jumping into, okay, I think I can produce this. I think I can actually make this. It's not just a, oh, that's a fun little game that your parents might say when you bring it over to the house and no one else has seen it. It had gotten it had gotten a fair amount of playtesting on Tabletop Simulator, from different kinds of people, from people who like sports games and people who don't like sports games, and so that was helpful to get a sense of,
Mhm.
oh, okay, yeah, you could do something with this. The thing that I think was the tipping point was playing the game and someone be like, "Let's do that again." Um, and they like it wasn't me trying to cajole. It wasn't me trying to get someone to like hop on and play again. I wasn't like begging, like we just did like 10 more minutes, please, 10 more. No, they're just like, oh, that like I kind of want to see if I could do that again the next time around. And so
Yes. Right?
um, that is always a good sign. And that was at one of the proto spiels.
Yeah, so just for people out there, that's a very good metric to use for whether your game is kind of ready. It's not somebody saying I'd buy that. It's somebody wanting to play the game again for reasons. And the reasons typically are, is that a replicable phenomenon, right? So is the feeling, the experience I get from this game, is it just a one-off because it was a fluke? Or does this game always produce that? Because if the game can always reliably produce a feeling, then that means you've done something at least correct design wise. Whether people like that feeling or not, that's another question. But when you're looking for a hook for a game, that is something you should always consider. Is, can is my hook replicable? Is this something that's under the control of the players, or is it completely random? Because if it's completely random, maybe I shouldn't say that's my hook, because it may or may not happen in the game, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are nuanced about what Hafiz just said. That your selling features should be something that always happen in the game, and that you'll notice that none of it is about like, oh, it's a game about basketball. Basketball's not really a hook.
Mhm.
Basketball is more of the bait. It's like
Yep.
might get you interested if you're into basketball. In fact, I would say sports in general are not at all, bait, because not a lot of, game players really love sports the way that non-game players might like
and
sports.
and
I don't
vice
know.
and vice versa. It's funny because
Yeah.
we're going to talk about ads a little bit later on and with those costs. But as I was running ads, I was getting some very unhinged comments on some of the ads, being like, "What? You like they people thought I was ruining children, and I was trying to make them obese by keeping them indoors and not having them go outside and play." They're just like, "Why would you create this thing that stops children from actually going out to play the sport?" And I'm like, I live in Canada where it's snowy a good chunk of the year, and this is a good way to still play basketball. Um,
Mm,
so it's like interesting, but yeah, the basketball isn't the hook. Basketball is just like the what might that be? But it's for any kind of game. It's the gameplay. Does this seem like something I want to try? Is there moments in there?
mhm,
Is this going to make me feel a certain way? And I think if your game can produce a feeling, if it can create a moment or several moments in the game, because that's the whole reason why we game. We want to have shared moments with other people, something to look back at and laugh at, and think about. I still remember I was playing the game Spots with my wife and some friends, and she needed to get like a specific number, and if she got that, she would win. But the chances were like super low, and she ended up hitting that one number, and it was a big moment, and it turned everything. And like that is something that people remember.
yes.
And so if your game can have something that people remember as they're playing through, if it can make them laugh or it can make them feel a certain way, that's also a good sign. If you're just like, my game is perfectly balanced and that was what I was going for, and that's your sense of achievement, I mean, that could do it too, but only focusing on the numbers or on the mechanic or only on the theme kind of takes away from the essence of what the game is supposed to be, which is the feeling.
Mhm. And just to give a name to that feeling, it's called fiero. That very specific thing that your wife felt, is like hands in the air, like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, it's fiero."
Mm,
Like fire in Italian or something like that. And, it is really that thing that it's possible, and that's the cool thing about things like dice. With dice, you know that you could possibly roll that,
mhm,
and then when you do, it's like the best feeling ever, which is different from a deck of cards, which is different from a lot of other game elements. But yeah, Fiero is a huge part of what gets people to come back to certain types of games. So yeah, and I can see that even being part of like Nothing But Net. Like when
mhm.
it's just like the buzzer beater in a real basketball game is that Fiero moment, and the same thing is going to happen in um, Nothing But Net, but it's more under your control.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, cool. Okay, so we got the starting price. We've got 80% of the game done. We're starting to talk with our graphic designers and our illustrators about making this thing a reality. And how far ahead of the launch date was all of that? Not the
So
playtesting part, but like the actual starting. Okay, this is going to be a real thing.
yeah, it's been a few years. It's been maybe about 4 years or so, and um, part of that is the reality of self-funding. You need to have the funds to be able to do things, and so saving up and kind of paying along the way as you go. Because I think a question that comes up quite often is how much do I pay for art? Which is an
Right.
interesting question because it really depends on the kind of art that you want. And so I mean, you could get by with just a few pieces of art that you repeat over and over, and most of it's graphic design. You could have more pieces of art to try and help get the theme or the story across. So it really depends on what you're trying to get out from the game, but then also what you're hoping for. Um, if you're spending $20 per art piece, you're not going to have a nice looking game, to be frank.
No,
Um,
that makes
and
sense, right?
yeah, and so I think a lot of people tend to ask that question, and they're like, "Well, what is a good price?" And what I found is with Nothing But Net, and then a previous game which was called Baghdad, and then my brother's Kickstarter that we did, which was D&D themed. We found that paying artists roughly 200 USD per piece was generally what they were asking for, what they were used to, but it also produced the best quality art. And I know there's variance there too. Like you might be paying a bit more than that. You might be paying a little bit less than that per illustration. But it depends on what you're talking with your artist about. So my artist does sports illustration, and he's done animations and illustrations for things like Bleacher Report. So I reached out to him and I'm like, hey. Um, I'm creating this basketball game and this is what it's about. And I love your art style. And I was wondering if you're open for commissions. And I found him on Instagram and I just messaged him and he's busy, but he was interested. And so we just discussed him doing the art between his other projects. So there was times where he had time and he could blitz out like multiple art pieces in one go. And there's other times where he was super busy. Like, okay, for the next 2, 3 months, won't be hearing from him, and totally understood that. And that allowed that relationship to kind of work because we knew each other's expectations and standards going in. Um, and I think I was able to pay 200 per art piece, which is roughly about 260 Canadian for any of the Canadians watching. And that adds up over time. So I have, including the expansion, probably 50 art pieces. So 50
Wow.
art, yeah. So 50 art pieces times $260 Canadian. You're looking
Yeah.
at over 10K just in art, which is again a real cost, and was one of the reasons things were spread out like that. That is something that I needed to save up for and spread out over over time.
Yeah, so the production schedule worked for that as well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because
And
throwing good money after bad is not the smartest way to run a business, right? Like if you took a loan to
yeah,
pay for the art now, that would not be necessarily the best idea.
and that was the thinking behind it. I don't want to spend money I don't have. A lot of people could get in a lot of trouble for that. And so thinking about, well, what is your budget and adjusting accordingly. This game was a passion project for me, and I wanted it to look as beautiful as it could be. And so I knew, okay, well, I want individual illustrations. I could have very easily had um, some cards repeated, or like
Hmm.
a illustration that could have played for two different things and cut that down. But I really like that they each have individual like illustrations
Yeah,
on them. And it also doubles up like now that's something that I can offer as an add-on. Like, hey, I love the art. If you love the art and you want to print it, here's a digital print, and you can buy several of these illustrations as a digital print. And so there's ways of also leveraging your art. The other thing too is you need to think about art when you're thinking about your marketing, because especially if you're self-funding your game, people are judging your game not having played it, but by looking at it. So if it
hmm,
if it looks really nice, if it looks, I have games that I bought that I haven't yet to play, and I bought them specifically because the box looks beautiful or the
yeah,
cards look beautiful. I have games that I have played and they were just okay, but I still kept them because the art is beautiful and the game is beautiful. And so that is something to consider because that's going to draw people's eye, and you can use
yeah.
that in your advertisements later on. Like here's what the art looks like for this game, and it kind of highlights that, oh, this is going to be a high quality product because the art just looks beautiful.
Yeah, we buy with our eyes, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the unfortunate nature of it, but also
Mhm.
kind of what it is. And I was talking about this today. If you're following me on Facebook, I was talking about,
I saw the post.
yeah, about somebody's just offhanded post said something like, overproduced Kickstarter slop, right? And basically, he's talking about bloat
Yeah.
and like how we tend to, in this current Kickstarter economy, overproduce stuff and, metal coins and UV coating where it doesn't need to be and all this stuff. And some of it is excessive, I will admit. and some of it isn't. Like the box that becomes a basketball net. I think that's just cool. Like right. Um, and so yeah, there's this battle, this constant battle of is this too much? But also it's the economy that we've created, the system that we've created, where people are expecting bigger, better, more off of Kickstarter because it's Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, and it's something you need to consider if you're planning on doing your own
Mhm.
Kickstarter. What was successful 5 years ago? Like you need to be able to top that today. You need to have gone are the days where you can be like, here's my idea and a few sketches, and here's some pictures of people playtesting it. You essentially need to have a finished product by the time you go live, so you could say like, here's this cool thing, because you're competing against some of the bigger game companies that are out there who are also using crowdfunding to then raise awareness and get pre-orders for their games.
Yeah, for them it's marketing, right? So
Exactly.
and they're willing to take that, X percent that Kickstarter takes to market to the millions of people who look at Kickstarter as their primary source of games, really.
Mhm.
Um, and it is interesting as well, that I'll say that you don't need all of the art done to go launch your Kickstarter. You're better off if you have it all, you
Mhm.
are. But if you don't, and because the art budget is a large chunk of an initial cash layout for the production, and you may not get it back because if your thing doesn't fund.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people sink a lot of money into art because, as we've both said, art is what really gets that initial draw that people will judge you. Well, they'll judge the book by the cover,
Yep.
right? If the art is good, they're at least interested, and then they'll dig a little deeper. So it's the first thing that catches their eye, right? And so yeah, that is where you can get away with like a couple what we call a hero piece,
Mhm.
where it's like the cover and maybe the main characters and a couple of the monsters or something. You don't necessarily need all the little doodads and whatnot, or maybe you need like two examples of every different type of thing, like an action card, an
Yeah.
equipment card, a character card, the box cover. What the board looks like, and that might not be 100% of the art, but that might be good enough to sell people on it, right? So
Mhm.
be judicious in what you're doing and figure out, do you need absolutely everything
Mhm.
to actually start? And the answer is technically no.
No, it's a balance. Depends on where you feel comfortable. So when we launched my brother's Kickstarter, he had 13 art pieces. He ended up with over 100
Yeah.
by the end of it. And so he used the hell out of those 13 for everything, like building out the campaign page did himself. We didn't really run ads, but everything else that we did was like building on those 13 pieces of art. And then he raised the rest of the money during the campaign to pay for everything else. But that meant that his delivery and everything else got delayed because now you're waiting for art, you're waiting for files to be reviewed and all these other things. We took the opposite approach this time around. Tried to get as much done as possible beforehand, so there's less guesswork. But that also means higher upfront costs. So you can balance that. As Sen mentioned, probably the most important art piece that you can get is the box. And that was almost one of the last things I did. And I feel like if I was to do something like this again, I would make sure to get the art done for the box first. It was delayed because we were trying to figure out how the damn box was going to open and move.
Right.
But that's the thing you're using in all of your ads. That's what you're going to grab people's attention when you post on Board Game Geek that your game is going to be coming up soon. That's the
It's how
front
they're going to
cover
recognize it
image.
if it goes to the shelves, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so for anyone who's just like, okay, I have a limited budget on art, what should I focus on? Get your game box art first. And then, yeah, a few examples, enough to show the game off. And then you can tell people that we're using the campaign to raise money for the rest of the art pieces. I'm just hoping to use the art to really just show off, like, here's the cool art. I just did a campaign update earlier today to just say, hey, here's like a spotlight on what the expansion looks like. And I
Mm.
haven't really shared much art about the expansion on the Kickstarter page. So here's the chance to be like, and here's this cool piece, and then here's this cool piece. By the way, you get this cool piece.
That is a really good technique, by the way. So, information and how you drip feed your audience
Hmm.
is actually a very important strategy. Like you cannot not have something to show for almost every day of your campaign.
Hmm.
And then it's really important to leave some stuff in the hopper
Yep.
for that. long period between the end of the campaign and when you're actually delivering, you need to have content, unfortunately,
Yeah.
to show them. Whether it's here are the new cards, here's this art that you've never seen before, and then you're going to get into here's a picture of the game actually being produced. They sent me a video of the the white box. Here's everything getting loaded onto pallets. They
Hmm.
People are vested in that
And they want to
because
see progress.
they've paid money. Yeah, and it shows the progress. It
Yep.
shows that you're communicating. And honestly, the amount of ill will that is gained by you not communicating is not worth it. You should just communicate.
Yeah, and we've been talking about costs, and we've been talking about costs in a monetary sense, but there's also a temporal cost. There's your time as well
Hmm.
too. And so, if you are planning on self-publishing, you are creating your own business at this point in time. You're going to spend less time on your actual designing than you are on figuring out logistics and replying to people. And customer service is really, really important. You need to be able to reply to people. I hadn't replied to someone for like over 24 hours because it was during the week and work was busy, and they like wrote a really long thing, and I wrote back like, look, I'm sorry. I definitely wanted to respond to you, but I'm one person, and it's like I'm doing this as a passion project, and so I could get to things in the evenings and the weekends, but I might not be as quick to respond. But you need to be able to respond. You need to be able to give up time to go to events to play test or hop on meetings to talk about logistics. And so that's, I think, part of the equation that not too many people ask about when they're asking about what's the cost of a Kickstarter. The cost of the Kickstarter is a lot of your time because
Hmm.
you're constantly checking things, replying to things, emailing people to follow up on things, reaching out to people, reminding people, especially when you get to the marketing stage and say you're working with influencers and you need them to create content. Well, you need that content for very specific times, but they're also very busy. And so things probably get lost along the way. You need to be able to follow up with that and see how things go. I
Yeah,
have new thoughts.
you are the cat herder.
You are the one in charge of everything. You can't really be like, okay, and now we're going to pass this off to Sen, unless you have supports. I'm very lucky that my brother, who's done a Kickstarter before, can be there to support. He also has some experience with Photoshop and other things, so I don't have to keep constantly harassing my graphic designer. I can just be like, "Hey, can you just make this quick tweak to the stretch goal list for me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it for you," and change it, and it's ready to go.
They also look exactly alike, so it's as if Hafiz is doing it himself.
Yeah, it's like 99.8% of me did the work. And yeah, so it's definitely something to keep in mind. And then something that's also in there is like, well, another cost is your own well-being. I got into game design as a way of dealing with my anxiety. It was a way for me to take me ruminating on thoughts that just like I should just let float away, to then focus on, well, how do I solve this problem that's in a game? And then I'm refocusing my thoughts. I'm like, this is great. This is definitely helping me deal with anxiety. And then I did the worst thing possible to be like, okay, this thing that's helping me with my anxiety, I'm gonna make this into a business, and I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
put this in front of
monetize this.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to monetize it, and I am going to put it in front of other people who may or may not like this thing and may or may not say I'm trying to make children obese when they see my ads. And so
It's
you need to be able to
phenomenal.
think about that as well too, because it can play on you. The first negative comment that I got on one of the ads, I took that super serious, and then started getting a few more. I'm like, oh, this is not even the audience that I'm really gearing this towards. So do I care about their thoughts? I mean, it's good to know, but no, really, I don't. Just delete or hide and then move on. Um, and so you do build up a bit of a thick skin, but you do need to be aware that things can weigh on you, especially because if it's a passion project of yours, like this is for me. Well, you care a lot about this one thing, and it's very difficult to separate the creation from the creator. Like you feel like so much of you is invested that if something is being criticized about the creation, you feel like you're being criticized. But when you need to have a bit of that separation, especially if you're viewing this as it's a product, I need to sell this, I need to make my costs back. Hopefully, you need to be able to take a step back to be like, okay, what's the best thing for the game? Maybe not the best thing for my vision for it. And that's still been a struggle. There's certain things that I could change, but I'm really tied to something. And so some things have been wrested away and put into a different kind of form that it had been, because it needed to be. Other things are still kind of there, but they're a little bit more subtle. So some other things that you have to consider as you're balancing all of this.
Right. So let's move ahead because I think we've only got a half hour and there's so much more to talk about. The management of stuff in the actual 30 days of the campaign, I think
Mhm.
we're gonna skip that. Let's
Okay.
skip that. Just we can talk about it some other time if we wanted to, but it's really I think what people actually hear about mostly, or at least if you're backing things, you're actually a part of it. I want
Mhm.
to talk about like delivering the goods, which is the long haul at the end. Like, what happens when everything's successfully funded? What are you looking forward to, or maybe not looking forward to, but it is in your future? What does the crystal ball say?
Yeah. Yeah, now we're getting into the this is the logistical part. This is how the sausage is made, and the part that not a lot of people think about when they decide to jump straight into I'm going to launch a game. It's like, okay, I have an idea for launching a game, but then hopefully you fund, and it's like, oh, cool, how do you get this out now? And then what's your long term plan? Because Kickstarter should be a stepping stone. It should be this is going to help me get the game made and raise awareness. But if you want it to live and last a lot longer than that, you need to be able to think about, okay, well, where is this thing going to be available for people? How am I going to continue to market this and get it out there? So we've talked a bit about the early costs are quite minimal. It's you doing your prototyping, so it's cards and markers and things like that. The real costs jump up when you are now working for or getting art done, getting graphic design done. Now you're in the thousands. Um, you're getting prototypes done. So you are actually talking with your manufacturer and having them create a version. And then that is something that's sent to you and you got to check it. And that takes some costs. And maybe we can loop back to that and working with influencers and stuff afterwards. But now you've funded the campaign and you need to do it. So the first thing is just paying for your manufacturing. So you should already know what your cost is. You've talked to your manufacturer, you figured out how many copies you're going to order. And so say you have 800 backers. You might want to actually order more than 1,000 copies of the game, because if you order 1,000 copies of the game, assume a certain percentage of them may have some damage, or you may have to re-deliver a few things, say 10%. But you want to be able to build that buffer in. And then you also want to be able to maybe connect with retailers. So you can do that through the campaign. There's also Facebook groups. There's a group called Retailers Who Back Kickstarter Games. So, posting in there, having something on your campaign page for retailers who are interested, or working with a distributor. So, someone like Quartermaster Logistics, and seeing, well, can they get your game and have it available in stores? And the process for that involves them reaching out to their list of stores and having a sell sheet about your game and what it's about, and how many people plays, and how much you're charging as an MSRP, um, and is there uptake, and then sending them games to see, okay, are they able to get stores to sell them? Do they have enough? And then do you have
Hmm.
enough in case there is demand to then send more? So you're kind of trying to figure out your balancing of how many, but you might want to order a little bit more games. So you'll get the discount because you're ordering more as well too, and then you can figure out how to sell those. The shipping, I think, is the big thing. I think
Yeah.
this is the thing that can really sink people who may have done a good job, because it's one of the more expensive things. It's also one of the things that just has this shroud of mystery around it.
Well, it's
And
it's
so,
volatile, right?
yeah,
Price changes, and you need to get quotes and understand that that quote is going to be completely different when you actually do the thing that you're going to do, because
yeah.
they can only guarantee the quote for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And it changes based on things like the weight or the volume. So if you make something and you're like, okay, we're going to include a playmat with it. Your
Oh no.
playmat's nice and long because it's rolled up. That long shape is going to cost you more than your nice square box. If your game is more than a kilogram, it's going to cost you more than if it's just slightly under a kilogram. So things to keep in mind when you're designing your game too, or when you're thinking about add-ons. I know
Yes.
Jamie Stagmar had a blog where he talked about he added a stretch goal for viticulture. I think it was metal coins. It would have bankrupted him. And he was so glad that he wasn't able to actually hit that stretch goal, because when you did math everything out, the cost would have just been astronomical.
Yeah, so for shipping, if people don't know, it's by weight or volume, whichever is greater, in their calculation. They want to make the money, right?
Hmm.
So, like if you said, the playmat, which is super light, it's just neoprene, it's rolled up, it just is volumetrically big.
Hmm.
And whereas metal coins, which are not don't take up a lot of space, they're just volumetrically dense. And so each of those things add a considerable cost to shipping because of their own little form factor quirks and foibles. So just make sure that you're considering all this, you're building all this into your estimations, and this is why when you are planning out your design of the um, stretch goals, like, don't include anything new. And when you're doing Kickstarter, you have to plan all of it out. It has to fit in the box. You have to know how much it all weighs. All that stuff is really important. And edge, edge on the side of less weight and less size by significant margin. Because if you're over it, you've just got pushed up into the next tier. It's like a tax bracket. It literally
Yep.
is like a tax bracket. And now, instead of spending, 25 cents for whatever, now you're spending 35. And it sounds, oh, it's only 10 cents more, but it's like, that's 10 cents per copy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now it's like, oh, now
Multiply
I'm
that
like,
by 2,000, and
yeah,
yeah,
it
it
becomes
it
a big deal eventually, right?
it
So,
adds up quickly. And I think there's this unspoken agreement between Kickstarter creators and Kickstarter backers that we kind of know the stretch goals are already inbuilt in there. Because you're adding new content, like new aspects of the game. It's like, well, did you play test that? You kind of have to play test that before you add it in. And there's other things that you could just add to your Kickstarter that don't cost that much. If you really wanted to say your game does really well, make a video on how to set up and play the game and stick a QR code on there and let people just do that instead of having to read through. That will add no weight to your game for shipping, but it's something that people really appreciate. I've seen other Kickstarters where they've actually done background music that you can play as the game is on. And it just, again, you scan a QR code and it takes you to something on their YouTube page that's there. Upgrading card quality, upgrading components. Those are things that you can do that will either have no effect or minimal effect on the cost. But if you're like, I'm going to add a mini, well, now you're paying for molding costs. You're paying for,
oh
um,
gosh.
you're paying to the extra weight that's in there, and people
Yeah.
will in the comments make all kinds of suggestions. And
Do not listen
you
to
really
them.
want
Do not
people to
listen to
like feel like good. You don't want them to cancel, and so you have to be careful not to agree to things. So if you just like, if someone's just like, it would be really cool. If you had uh, alternate box art for this one thing, it's like, okay, that's a great idea. Well, now you have to pay for a new like you have to pay for new art. You need to pay for a new design, a new cut, and then when your manufacturer's producing it, now you're producing two, and you have to figure out the logistics of how many people are
Yeah.
getting this one and this one. Um,
And then what's a skew on them,
yeah,
and like
it's
different
really
skews, and oh
really
my
have to
god.
think through, okay, well, what is the value add and what can you handle? There's a bunch of suggestions I've been getting on mine, which are great suggestions. I cannot add any of them because I do not have the money to add any of them. Realistically speaking, most first time game designers are going to lose money on their first game. I'm 100% going to lose money on the first game. So if we go through all of the costs that led up to this one thing,
Even if your Kickstarter's successful.
yeah, I mean, it's successful now. It's funded, but the funding goal is kind of like again, it's the psychology of it. It's like, oh, you funded quickly, and then hopefully people will jump on board, and then you can say you funded quickly and all of that. But all in all, like if I was to take a look at all of the costs for the game, so that would be the art, that would be the prototypes, that would be marketing and influencers and graphic design and all that stuff. I'm looking at probably around 37,000 Canadian.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's before you even printed a single
that's
copy.
that's before paying for manufacturing, and so the hope is to kind of pay yourself back. Now I can justify it by hoping that right now I'm about 16,000. I'm hoping I get to maybe 25 by the end of the campaign. Well, I could justify that bit by saying, well, I've been working on this for 4 or 5 years. By the time it probably gets to people 6 years, if whatever I lost, if I spread over 6 years, that's how much I spent on my hobby. So if it comes to like 1,000 or 2,000 each year, I'm like, okay, I can justify that. But um, to give a sense of like how much it costs to do a game, it's the cost of a used sedan. If you wanted to buy a car,
Hmm.
you could either make your own and publish your own board game, or you could buy a nice car for yourself.
Yep.
So it's really just where do you want the money to go? And we talked a bit about where the money goes. So I mean, a third of that is just art. Part of that is the graphic design. I think I've spent around like 3,500 Canadian on graphic design, and you need both. Like your art is subjective; it's going to draw people in. The graphic design, as we heard when we talked to Catherine, has to be objective. People need to be
Mm.
able to understand what you're looking at. And then the next biggest thing is the marketing, because you could have the best game in the world if no one knows it exists. Well, who's going to want to go and buy it? And part of it you can try and figure out on your own. Part of it you can find other people to help you. I ended up going with Launchboom, and I really appreciated their approach because instead of doing everything for you, they teach you how to do things. And so it's like taking a course and you have support and there's a community, and then you can like go through the stages. Okay, here's how you set up your landing page because you need to have a place to direct people. And here's how you craft your messages. And here's how you develop your ads. And here's resources you can reach out to if you're looking for people to do X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think they were quite worth it. The influencers was another thing. So you can't just go out there and say my game is great, because why would you trust me? Like, of course I'm going to say the game is great. I have a vested interest in this. It's like a politician being like, I have your best interest in mind. Well, do you, or do you have yours because you want to be reelected or elected? And so you need outside people to come and say things, but it's also to try and get more visibility about your
Hmm.
game. And I think one thing that I would change is I ended up using 3 paid influencers, and then a few free ones. And I think if I was to do this in the future, I don't think I would have as many paid ones. I think I would have one paid person, because then I could use that in the ads as well too, which is what I'm doing. Um, and then I would have a bunch of free ones. I would try and actually spend the extra money that I would have spent on influencers.
To
Um,
get more to free people.
I would order more copies of my prototype, and I would just send them out to people and just get massive coverage. Because if the idea is people are talking about your game and they can justify your game, if your game is everywhere, if people are seeing it all over the place, they're more likely to be like, "Oh, that's interesting." And some of the best content I've gotten has been free content. Um, and so I think I would actually readjust how I would spend my money on the marketing part to not spend as much on paid influencers, but just have way more copies of the game. Because producing the game is actually probably the cheapest part of the entire process. Just get tons of copies of these games and then send them to people who are
Hmm.
excited because they're building up their audience. They might be really interested in the theme, which is why they've reached out. And um, one thing I didn't do, which I kind of wish I did, I made the video myself for the Kickstarter. I'm just like, I'm spending money everywhere else. I can do that on my own. I have a cool box, I have cool components. It'd be nice for people to see the physical thing. I think I would actually take some of the money that had gone to the paid influencers and like shipping and all the other things, and actually taken that and gotten a proper video made from someone like Mesa Game Labs, so David, or I can never say properly, Oniro, which I think is George, is his
Hmm.
company, or Ori from Kagan Productions. I think I would have gotten a proper video, because that could have also been used in a bunch of different ways. It's not just a here's the video for the Kickstarter page, but it's a I can pull clips from this and use it in advertisements. I can pull clips from this and turn them into GIFs/GIFs, however you like to say it, and have it on the Kickstarter page. Um, I feel like that I could have gotten a lot more. I could have gotten a lot more out of, say, a video than I did out of some of the other things that I had paid for. But the advertising is a fair amount. I feel like on Facebook ads, you're kind of figuring out how things work on Facebook, and it could be a money sink. It will take your money, but you need to spend a certain amount for it to learn who are you going after, going after. So I think the influencer costs were about 1,600 Canadian. So fair chunk of change. That's how much you could probably get an animated trailer for. Maybe a little bit
Hmm.
more. to get an animated trailer. So again, cost benefit. And the Facebook ads have probably been around 8,000 Canadian. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and so that's to like build up the email list. So with 8,000, I was able to build up an email list of around 2,200. I was able to fund on the first day, but again, it depends on your game too. Mine is a niche within a niche. It's a two-player game and it's a sports game, and so Facebook had a harder time getting people to come over and find it as a result. But had I not used Facebook, how else would people have learned about the game? And so it's kind of it's this double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And then just kind of knowing where do you want to put things. So again, I've been saving up for years and like, I know I have to do ads. Um, you can go out and just spend your time going to conventions, getting people to be aware of your thing through playtesting. The folks that did Galactic Cruise did an awesome job with that. Most of their crowd came from playtesting.
Yeah, they were everywhere for a
They,
long time.
oh yeah, and I remember playing the game like years ago on Tabletop Simulator during the pandemic when they were in one of the earlier iterations. I'm like, this is a really cool game, and so you can do it that way. Thing is, the time sink. Where do you want to put your time, and also where do you want to put your energy? Despite volunteering to do a live stream with you every week and you being very kind enough to accept me, I'm an introvert. I don't like being like the center of attention or like in large groups. And
Me
so
either.
and so the idea of like, okay, you can go out to a bunch of conferences and talk with people and try and promote your game that way. Like, I'm not a very good salesman in the sense that I don't want to talk about the game. I feel like I'm being spammy. Um, and so using ads was a nice option. It's like, okay, the ads are doing the work. I don't have to really go and do it. So there is also like, how do you want to? It's the time, money, control. You get two.
Mhm.
You can't have all three. So which two do you want to hold on to?
Yeah, I find marketing to be the biggest area of deficit in the industry as a whole.
Hmm.
Um, like, and I mean true marketing, like breaking out of the BGG crowd into tapping into other areas, other people who might be interested in a game, might be interested in this as their first game or
Hmm.
their first hobby game, right? They might have
Hmm.
played some other games, but and so I think that's where a lot of the sub niche games have that ability or that potential to tap into audiences that Catan might not be able to
Hmm.
tap into, right? So, did you do any advertisement in sports like areas?
Oh, so I reached out to a few sports influencers, and so on the second week of the campaign, there's these guys that are great synthetic sports who are on YouTube and they do videos, um, and I got them to do like a promo in one of their videos, and the video has gotten I think about 50,000 views so far. No conversions at all from that. There was a couple other sports influencers that I sent the game to, and then radio silence after that, or the costs were just super expensive, and
Yeah, because
so
they're used to dealing with things that aren't niche, right? That are
yeah,
more
and
mainstream.
because so much of sports is now being dominated by sports betting, you have all these
Hmm.
betting companies that are just like blah 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 betting, and
Yeah.
like here's your free parlay and all this other stuff, and they're paying them like thousands of dollars for a single ad. The one thing that I kind of wish I did and I didn't do, but I did look into, is bus ads. It's actually it. So the TTC, the Toronto Transit Commission, is a massive transit system in Toronto. It's actually very reasonable to get posters in the subways.
That's amazing.
It's like if I wanted to get two large posters right by the door, it's like $500, and they'll be up for a month.
In
Um,
on like one line or all
on
lines?
on one line. So
Okay.
but the lines like we have like
There's only
four.
really four of
There's like
them.
four, and the big one that you can pick which line you want,
Yeah,
but
the big
it's
U. Pick the big U all the way
well,
up
the
to
Raptors were
Yorkdale.
in the playoffs up
Right.
until a few days ago,
Yeah.
and so you're getting
Sad,
tons of
sad.
people taking transit to get down to the stadium, leaving the stadium, plus everyone who's going to work every day. And what do you do when you're on the train? You're looking at everything else that's around, and you're looking at these posters. Um, and so I kind of wish I had done that and spent money there versus say spending it on uh, sports influencers or even paid influencers, because I feel like just the sheer volume of people going through, even if it was just two posters on a very long line, may have gotten more people, especially those who were maybe coming back from a game, they're super jazzed because like, hey, we won all the games that we won at home. Um, like they're excited, they see a basketball game, and they're just like, okay, impulse, let me just add this on right now and hopefully forget about it
Hmm.
until I send them the game. But um, there are other ways of going about promoting. Another thing that I had done actually is I made basketball tickets, so it looked like the ticket to go to a
Oh,
game, and a
yeah.
QR code that took you to the landing page. And so I would give those out to people whenever they would ask about the game, like, "Oh, what are you up to?" I'm like, "Oh, I've been working on this basketball game." "Oh, it's so cool. Where can I learn more about it?" I'm like, "Here's this basketball ticket." Then they could scan it and take a look. So there's definitely things that you can do to raise awareness of the game, and you can think outside of the box a little bit as well, depending on how you want to do it. It doesn't necessarily need to be board game people. It could be people that are into that theme. When we had Dusty and Amy on, they had mentioned that they had so many people that were just really into flowers,
Hmm.
and they're just like, "Wait, there's a game about flowers? That
Right.
is so cool. Can we talk about it?" And they're like, "Yeah, here you go."
It's so interesting. I was looking at the I don't know, it was probably a thread on BGG, forum anyways, where it said, what are some companies where you will buy anything from them sight
Mm.
unseen?
Mhm.
And it was overwhelmingly like Stagmeyer, like Stonemeyer and
Yeah.
companies like that. But Duxomnium had a lot of people just like, yeah, I'll buy anything that they make sight unseen
Yep.
because it's just my vibe, right?
Yeah. And I think that's part of the investment in it too. Like some games are going to do really well right off the bat. Other games are a bit of a slow burn. But if you can show that you consistently make beautiful games and hopefully
Mhm.
games that play well, people will come back to you. We, I, I believe Smirk and Dagger just finished a campaign too. It's like a really cool,
Yeah,
um,
but poker? A poker game?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
got a 1930s cartoony vibe, a bit
Yeah.
of a Cupheady vibe to it
Yeah,
too.
rubber hose.
Yeah, and so like they've done the night cage, and they did a place for all my books. But if you take a look at Kurt's Kickstarter history and the games he made, like I think one of the first ones was either canceled or didn't really make that much money, and then the later ones built up more, and then you build up an audience and more people want to buy your games afterwards. And so it could be more of a slow burn to show that you're able to make things that people enjoy. And even if it's not for them for the first ones, then they can just take a look and be like, oh, other people enjoy this. Oh, the art looks good. Hey, it looks professional. And then you're building a bit of a reputation as you're moving forwards.
Yep. So so what's the next thing for you on wrap up of the campaign? Like let's say everything goes as planned and you
Mhm.
get to, 16, 18,000 Canadian, maybe 20. Who
Yep.
knows?
Yeah, knock on
Um
wood.
yeah, knock on wood. Now, just so everybody knows, like the math that we typically use is whatever you make in the first 2 to 3 days, you'll make in the last 2 to 3 days, and it's also the amount that you're probably gonna make inside the other 24 days in the middle.
Yep.
The lull, we call it the lull, the Kickstarter lull. That's the doldrums. And so you just need to keep yourself invigorated during those middle days and keep having content to give people, to, kind of hype them up, keep them interested. And so, yeah, it's like basically you take the first 3 days and multiply that by 3, and that's kind of what you're gonna estimate your end is going to be.
Yeah, it's a good rule
That
of thumb.
that typically works out to be around, plus or minus 10% what you're getting. So, what are you gonna do, when you finally wrap the campaign other than, celebrate a little?
Yeah, which
What's
I think
what's
is
what's
important. You definitely,
Yeah, yeah.
regardless of whatever happens, like you want to celebrate. We're just going to jump into it. I mentioned the goal was to get as much of it done beforehand.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of art that needs to be finished, but we're jumping straight into getting it produced. In the timeline, I'd said we're probably aiming for February of next year, but
For
depend
delivery?
if it, yeah, for
Yeah.
delivery, so to get it in people's hands. But if things break right because so much of the art and everything else was done early, I'm hoping, like really hoping, we can maybe
Christmas?
deliver, yeah, before Christmas time, and then people could be enjoying that during the holidays. So it's actually just keep my nose to the grindstone and making sure I can push things through and get things going. But it is going to be a nice feeling knowing that, hey, here's this chunk of change that's come in that I now have available to then pay for things. Because
Mhm.
so much of this over the last several years has been, okay, I've saved up this amount of money. I'm going to reach out to my illustrator and ask for three new pieces. Okay, I've saved this amount of money. Time to reach out and
Yeah.
talk to the graphic designer. I've saved this amount of money. Okay, now I can pay to get the Launch Boom course. Okay. And so it's constantly save up a little bit, use it, save up a little bit, use it. And so to be able to get a large chunk back, I think psychologically is going to feel very nice because it's going to be like, okay, I actually have money now. Um, and then two, I can start figuring out the manufacturing, shipping, finalize graphic design and art, and just move forwards with it. So I think the celebration is going to be quite short, and then it's going to be jumping in, and the real celebration is going to be when people start messaging or posting that, hey, my game arrived.
Yeah. And it is, it's like an engine builder game, right? You've saved a little, you've generated some stuff. Now you get to translate it into turn those cubes into artwork,
Yep.
right? And now you're
Yeah.
gonna generate a lot from your big engine, but now you've got to translate all those
Game
cubes into games.
game design out there for anyone who's interested. You can make a worker placement, resource management game around crowdfunding your game.
I'm sure that Bezier just made one about making your game, but I think it's more about the factories.
Yeah, the Meeple Inc. Then they had to change the name because Meeple became like a term that no one's allowed to use anymore.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
Very
which we're
cool.
trying because we're we're still using it in our title.
Yeah, I don't think they care about us, so,
Yeah,
um,
that's both
and
great, but also
uh,
hurts just a little bit in here.
just a little bit.
Yeah,
So you're going to celebrate, you're gonna put the nose to the grindstone, you're gonna get your artwork done. Um, for those of you who are wondering, maybe you are, I don't know, I always know when this is that, February 6th, 2027 is Chinese New Year, so you just have to be very aware that if your deadlines are anywhere within that time, unless you beat Chinese New Year,
mhm.
you will suffer from Chinese New Year. The revenge of Chinese New Year will set you back like a month.
Yep.
So just be aware of that. Anybody who has like a late January, early February, even all the way up to mid February, because Chinese New Year is 2 weeks, so it is up until the 20th next year, I think, the 6th to the 20th of February. So just be aware. Just be aware that can happen if you are running production through China, which most people still do, despite all the weirdness that has happened over the last couple of years with tariffs and whatnot. So there you
Yeah,
go.
it still makes the most amount of sense financially.
It is. So you've already set up your logistics in terms of distribution and warehousing or fulfillment. Sorry, not distribution yet.
Fulfillment, yeah. So we're doing something a bit different. I've actually been talking to Gabe, who we had on a few weeks ago, about his approach because he's doing a game a month, and like
Mhm.
how are you managing that? And
He manufactures at a factory that just ships for him, doesn't he?
yeah, and so I'm planning on doing the same. The game is a bit smaller, weight-wise and dimensions-wise, and so I'm going to be filling directly from China. And I'm hoping that that means cutting out, sticking everything on a freight, and waiting the extra few weeks for it to ship across on a boat, and then going to a fulfillment center and them sorting everything. I'm getting the manufacturer to actually box everything for me,
Mhm.
so they're going to pre-package, and then when it goes to the company that's going to ship it, they just need to stick the label on. And so it's going to
Yeah.
cost a little bit more on the manufacturing side, but it'll save more on the shipping side.
Right. And um I guess then you won't have to worry about, or who worries about like VAT and stuff like that?
They take care of that and then they invoice me after the fact. But
Oh,
because they're
okay.
not sending a ton of stuff all at once, they're
Yeah,
sending individual packages. It actually is this interesting loophole where if it's under a certain amount for the value, tax in or in VAT in certain places don't apply. And
right,
so they're not charging me VAT on 200 copies that I'm sending, say, to the UK.
right.
They're charging me on like four copies that are individually being sent. And so if the cost is less, it could actually just be count as a de
It could
minimis.
make you money.
Maybe, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
They have to pay you. Britain pays you.
Yeah,
That'd be amazing.
I will take my payment in British chocolate.
Yes. It is much better than Canadian chocolate and worlds better than American chocolate. So yeah. And then you're not warehousing either, which is another way that you're going to save money, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the
Well, okay.
only warehousing would be if it's sent off to a distributor, because what they'll do is they'll sell
Yes.
on consignment. So they'll take the product, send it to the stores. If the stores sell it, then money will come back
And
to
do
me.
you
But
have distribution yet?
working on it. So
Yes.
that's the next thing. So that's like you mentioned the slump that happens in the middle of the campaign. So if
That's
anyone
when you
who's
do that.
running, yeah, if anyone who's running a campaign, just know the first 2 3 days you're going to feel like you want to be glued to your computer and constantly refreshing, and then it's like crickets
Yep.
for the next 2 3 weeks. So use that time to figure out your pledge manager and talk to. You'll have a good sense, like Sen said, if you know your first couple days worth of numbers, multiply that by three, and you're like, okay, now you can figure out what your money is, and where you can start spending it. And then spend those 3 weeks because you're going to go crazy just going and refreshing the whole time. Use it to talk to setting up your pledge manager, figuring out distribution, um, maybe talking with licensors. There's some great companies out there like Meeple on Board. Um,
Michael Raftopoulos.
yeah, Michael is awesome. Um, and so you could use that time really well to get yourself set up, because if you wait till after the campaign, then it's a whole ton of stress coming on you because, like, oh my God, I have all these things to do. But if you slowly chip away at it during that time, then you're not dealing with 100 things, you're dealing with like 15.
Yeah, and another good thing to think about is if you are, if you have a single SKU, is look into consolidation, because you chances are, even if you're like this viral Kickstarter hit,
Hmm.
you're still not going to get distribution
Yep.
easily. Consolidation may be the only way your game gets into distribution channels. And just understand there's other ways to do things too, right? So, my friend Amy, she doesn't really do distribution in a traditional way. She distributes in, because her games are very different. She can get into like very different stores, right?
Hmm.
There's other options than just traditional hobby chain,
Yeah.
but it
Distills
is
did that.
from.
Distill, they sell them at like whiskey stores and
Yeah,
things like that. Yep.
exactly, right? And so for most of us who make hobby games, yeah, it's, ACD and Alliance and those types of distributors. But if you make anything that might have a little bit of pull at a different type of outlet, look into how those games or those places buy product. So like museums or um, Hot Topic or
Hmm.
anything like that that does a little bit different. Now places like Hot Topic actually do have accounts with hobby distribution, because they like the party games and things like that as well, right? But they may also have little contracts with other ways of getting games into them. So there you go. Lots of stuff to think about, everybody. You know what? We'll come back to Hafiz's trials and tribulations as he goes through this journey. We can walk along with him. We'll walk beside him. We'll learn. We'll live vicariously through nothing but net. And we'll do a postmortem maybe a year from now.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Uh,
And hopefully, this is helpful for people because I
yeah.
know I was stumbling through the process and trying to figure out how everything is.
Mhm.
And a lot of it's the numbers, and the back end can seem very um, shrouded. And so to demystify a little bit, like, here's a sense of what the costs are for the things that go into the campaign. So hopefully that helps people start planning or thinking about what they would want to do for their campaign.
Yeah, and we can project now, but in a year from now, we'll actually know actual
Yep.
values. So there you go.
Yep.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. I'm not sure who we're having next week. Do we know who we're having
We
next
have a
week?
few people that are planned. Some are confirmed for June, but there's still a few that I'm waiting on
Okay.
for May. So it may be mystery guest, but it will be someone awesome as always,
Yeah.
just like some of our previous guests. So hopefully we see you all then.
Yeah. Mystery guest is better than mystery meat.
Yep, that's
All
always
right.
that's a good rule of thumb.
It is a good rule of thumb. All right. We'll see y'all later. Bye bye. Okay, we're out.
Cool. Thanks, then. Sorry. Hopefully.
Cool.